Hey everyone, I'm James Reeves. You're listening to the Automotive Icons podcast. Today, we're talking about the fact that I do not own a modern car. The newest car that I own is from the year 2000, believe it or not. And it makes me feel super old to say, like, I don't own a modern car. The newest car I own is 2000 because in my mind, 2000 still modern, but it's not. It's 25 years old. eBay has reinvented vehicle buying from click to curb. Everything's covered with their new secure purchase. eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery, it's all built in. And eligible vehicle purchases are backed by up to $100,000 in protection. This is what modern car buying looks like. Get your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. Why? Not to be edgy, not to be nostalgic like that weird couple that you know that goes to Disney every summer, even though they're in their mid-40s. I'm saying that every car I own, and I'm not going to tell you how many cars that I own, but of every car that I own, the newest one is the year 2000. It's my daily driver that I talk about constantly, my Toyota Crown, which I love. And I think that it is a more than adequate substitute for any new car as a daily driver. Like I'm talking about single car household. I'm not talking about classic cars, antiques, weekend toys. Anyone can talk to you about how great their 1968 Corvette is when they drive it in the odd sunny afternoon in the spring and the fall. That's not for a one-car household. I'm talking about daily drivers, whether or not cars from the 1990s and early 2000s replace modern daily drivers, what you give up when you do it, and what you get from it that people don't really talk or think about. So we're not talking about old cars, but we're not talking about new cars either, right? There's kind of this moving target in the middle. If your shop says, we don't work on these anymore, that's an old car. If it's before the OBD, like the onboard diagnostic program, the little plug you plug into the computer in the car, you've got an old car. If it doesn't have ABS, probably an old car. Pre-R134A refrigerant. Is that right? Is that the most recent one? I'm going to say that that's an old car. I mean, again, I'm going to harp on AC quite a bit because I live in the South. You need it here. I'm not talking about your Uncle Bob's project car. I'm not talking about carbureted cars. If we're talking a carbureted car, you've got an old car. But I am talking about cars that are old enough to be relatively simple, but new enough to function as daily transportation. So what is the minimum standard for what we're talking about here, for it being like a real daily, a real, like your only car? I want the answer to be yes. If the question is, could you use this as your daily driver and your only car? Again, South needs to have good air conditioning, needs to be able to drive on the interstate, 75, 85 miles an hour. I would say below like 3250 RPM. It's not sounding like it's going to blow up or it's going to overheat. No weird smells. No exhaust stench, like, you know, every time you start it up or every time you drive it, you smell exhaust or something. No fuel stink, gasoline stink, reasonable fuel economy compared to the horsepower it puts out. Maybe you could ride in it comfortably for a couple of hours. Another point I want to make, though, is you could say this about a 2005 Civic, and I'm not knocking 2005 Civics. I'm just saying if we were talking about wholly sensible cars, this would go in another direction. That's not what we're talking about here. I'm talking about a car with soul. I think a lot of you and I are of the same mind where new cars are kind of soulless. I want to have something that gives me some benefits over like a modern car, but still looks cool. So when you're trying to figure out the cutoff, really, I'd say one of the defining points, transmission gearing. I would never daily drive. I have a 69 Mustang. I would never daily drive it. Why? Transmission gearing kills it. These cars, many of the classics were designed for pre-modern interstate driving, like 50, 55 mile an hour driving. So you're talking about 2-speed and 3-speed automatics. I had to drive my Mustang from Pensacola to New Orleans one time on I-10. I will never do that again. It was miserable. It's got a C4 automatic with 3 gears, and that was pretty common back then. So you get high RPMs, it's noisy, it gets hot, you get really nasty fuel burn, bad non-existent air conditioning, even into the 80s. And I think you can get some daily drivers in the 80s, like my 944, it drives on the interstate just fine. It's got a 5-speed manual. It's got good air conditioning. But you also have to look at like the serviceability gap. At this point, it's cars from the 80s. You bring them to a shop, they're going to be like, dude, get this out of here. You need to take this to a specialist, or we don't work on these. Where you get to like the late 90s, it's no problem. I can bring my Crown down to my neighborhood shop, and I'm like, look, guys, I need new fluids and filters. And no problem. We've got that. We can do that for you. We're not afraid of this car. Rust protection is another thing. Rust protection wasn't really common until like, maybe the 80s or 90s. You also have to look at your regional realities. Again, you need air conditioning in the south. If you're in the north, you've got road salt, and that'll just chew up old cars. I mean, it's just a fact. Like, no one will buy a classic car that's lived its whole life in Michigan. Classics are second cars. Classic cars, you can. I mean, I did daily drive. I think I mentioned this in the last podcast, a 1966 Mustang with 120,000 miles on it, no air conditioning. That was my daily driver and my only driver from age like 16 to 18. And, but I was 16 years old. I was willing to tolerate it, but it was miserable, man. Now, I think the biggest criticism of getting a car like we're going to talk about, again, I think like 90s to 2000s, is people worry about parts availability. And I think this is overrated. I think people worry about this more than they really ought to. Think about it this way, okay? How many of you with cars like 2015 and newer, how many of you, other than getting in an accident, have been like, man, I really need parts for this car? Hopefully the answer is none of you, because if you have already needed parts for your car with just regular wear and tear, I would suggest you get a different car. And that's the whole point. Talk about my Toyota Crown, which I'm going to do at length in this video. If you have something against Toyota Crowns, you better just switch it off now, because I love this thing more than I could ever love a human baby. And my Crown is a 2000. It's 25 years old, coming up on 26. It's never needed anything replaced. Filters and fluids. That's it. My point is, it's like now, oh man, I'm really worried about this car that's 25 years old because I'm not going to be able to get parts for it. You can buy a new car every 5, 6, 7, 10 years, whatever, if that really scares you, but you're never going to own the car long enough where parts availability should matter. So it kind of puts you into this rat race, and that's just yet another reason why I like, again, these cars from like late 90s and early 2000s. I'm not scaring myself, terrifying myself into buying a new car every 5 to 10 years like I used to do. I mean, man, I've owned 4 Jeep Wranglers, and as soon as the warranty ran out, because I didn't trust those things, every time my warranty ran out, I would trade it in and I would get a new one. Newer, bigger, better every single year, and then warranty and how expensive they are to fix and how expensive it is to diagnose these systems and the new computers and crap that we don't want in them. Man, I sound like a conspiracy theorist right now, but I think you guys can smell what I'm stepping in here. I'm tired of being afraid of something breaking on my car because it's going to run out of warranty and I'm going to get charged $1 jillion. So I'm going to go and I'm going to sign up for a new car with more financing, and I'm going to pay interest. And I'm going to overpay for a car that as soon as I drive it off the lot, it's going to lose 20 to 40% of its value. I'm just done with it. You know what's more important than parts availability? Durability, and I would even say popularity. Like if you've got not only a car, again, like the Toyota Crown, my Crown, which you cannot really get in the United States unless you get it from some weirdo like me who imported it from Japan. They're kind of hard to come by, but there are probably tens, if not hundreds of thousands of them in Japan. So it takes a little bit more legwork, but you can get parts for it. But you don't even have to go that far, because I've got a 2JZ engine very similar to what was used in many Lexuses of the same period, almost identical to those engines, if not identical. Very similar to the Toyota Supras of the time. And it's a Toyota. It's got like 38,000 miles on, or 46,000 miles on it, something like that. And it's probably going to go another 146,000 miles before I ever really need to be concerned. So I'm getting something that's durable. I'm not worrying about parts availability because, like I just said, I think that's a little bit overrated. And if I do need something, or it needs some work, or if I do need an engine part, there were so many of these engines out there and so much parts commonality between Toyotas of the era that this is kind of a smart buy. But I also have a car where people see me drive by, they take pictures of it. It's mainly the right-hand drive, it freaks people out a little bit, but it's a cool car with some soul. Now, I think I've given you kind of in a roundabout way some good reasons why 90s and 2000s cars are better than what we have, but let me give you like a punch list. I'm tired of software. I'm tired of firmware. I don't care how hard or soft the wear is. I don't want any wear, flaccid wear or otherwise. I don't want it. I'm tired of it. I would say no touchscreens. Ironically, my Crown has a touchscreen, but it's much simpler, and it isn't integral to. It still has all the buttons, right? If that touchscreen goes out tomorrow, I have physical buttons and controls that are intuitive to use because you only had a limited amount of real estate. You didn't have this tablet in front of you like Lindsay's new Jeep, her 2025 Jeep, that's got like an iPad on it, or like the Teslas, right? Where you have a theoretically unlimited amount of space to make the menu as complicated as you want it to be. None of that. You were limited to, you only have so much space on the dash for so many switches, so many levers, so it's got to all make sense, right? I don't need to bust open the owner's manual or get on YouTube to figure out how to turn on the radio. You also get comparable real-world performance. If I blindfold you and put you in the back of my car, which if you're lucky, that could happen to you someday, just randomly, and I drive you around in this car and I drive you on the interstate, drive you all around town after I kidnap you, you're not going to be like, man, that guy was in an old car. You're not going to know the difference. In fact, you're going to be like, I was actually quite comfortable, officer, with that man who kidnapped me, James Reeves. I could tell it was him because of his distinctive voice, because I listened to the Automotive Icons podcast. And he drove me around town, and I was quite cozy in, I don't know what it was. It felt like a limousine. It could have been a 2025. It could have been a brand new car. If I was driving you around in my Mustang, my 69 Mustang, you'd be like, even though it's only got 41,000 miles on it, it was loud, it was stinky, it felt like an old car, it felt like a box spring mattress I was sitting on, right? So you're getting practical, comparable, real-world performance from a 2000 car versus a 2025 car. You've also got less emissions-driven complexity. And, again, I'm very pro-environment. My wife is an environmental plaintiff's lawyer, so I'm very pro-environment. But I also think that there are a lot of things that manufacturers do just to tick a box, even though in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't make sense from a driving standpoint or an environmental standpoint. Great example, 1KZTE engines. These are the turbo diesel engines from Land Cruiser Prados, I'm going to say 70 series, and 90 series Prados. It may have made its way into other cars, I'm sure it did, but these had emissions recycling systems, right, to make them cleaner. I'm making air quotes if you're not watching this on YouTube. This would dump exhaust gases. It would recycle them, and it would dump them straight back into the engine, like into the manifold, and it was terrible for the car. It was terrible. You get a lot of head splitting from overheating. You get a lot of crud, a lot of gunk that builds up in these 1KZTE engines because of this stupid, terrible idea that was exhaust gas recycling that was mainly done just to check a box for an emission standard. Same thing with the start-stop. God help me if I ever find the man who invented start-stop and he's right there and he's in front of me. I don't know what I would do. He would get a piece of my mind. Let's say that. And I really think that that's part of the problem. It's like the annoying little systems, the safety systems, and like, look, airbags are great. I think that's awesome. ABS, that's great. Those are safety features that work. You know what's really annoying are those speed chimes, right? I know that all three of the Euro viewers and listeners out there, they know what I'm talking about because they have this regulation in the EU where If you have a car, every single time you start the car, if you start going over the speed limit, which we all do, I mean, let's admit it, we're, car people, we all drive at least 5, the old saying, right? 9, you're fine, 10, you're mine, if you're talking about from the perspective of a police officer. So they've got these little nanny alerts on these EU cars where if you're driving over the speed limit, it starts beeping at you, and you can shut it off, but you have to shut it off every single time you turn on the car. Ironically, I think it's far more dangerous because every European dude that I've driven with, they're ripping around, they're driving around their neighborhood, driving around their business, whatever, and they're messing around with the touchscreen, trying to deactivate the alarm because it's driving them crazy, thereby bringing their focus away from the road. So I'll shut up about the Crown. I'll use another vehicle as an example that I own. A 1999 Mercedes G320, a G-Wagon with a 6-cylinder. It was the 6-cylinder that they used in the S-Class. Great, reliable car, easy to find parts, relatively fuel efficient. To me, it's at this sweet spot of complexity while being new enough to work well. Like if I need to, I can swap the carburetor on my Mustang. My G-Wagon, I can take it to the Mercedes dealership. They can do whatever it is that they need to do, even though this car is 26 years old. So it's complex. It's more complex with a fuel injected like an EFI system versus an old carbureted car, but it's not so complicated where you also need like a computer programming degree to figure out how to work the car, or where the keys cost like $500 if you lose them. It's like this sweet spot of not too complex, but complex enough where you get some payout, right? Where it's not going to annoy you. And that's what I always say to my camera guy, Ryan, where it's like, Ryan, I'm not your dad. I don't care if you go through my windshield if we get into a collision. Just please buckle your seatbelt so this car will stop beeping at me, right? I also talk a lot in this podcast about cool factor and like the trough. The trough is a very real thing. The trough exists about 10 years after a car comes out, and it works its way down into the bottom of the trough about 10 to 15 years after it's come out, where it's lost 40, 50% of its value, if not more. Nobody wants them. I graduated high school in 2001, and in 2001, man, if you had a Fox body Mustang, you were a dork, right? You were broke. No one wanted to look at them, when right now Velocity Systems is selling, if you guys know them, they're the people that like make the refurbished Broncos and charge $250,000 for them. They're now remaking Fox body Mustangs, like those Mustangs from the late 80s all the way until 93, and they're charging $300,000. Now they're cool, right? And it's like that 30-year cycle. In many states, 30 years is like the cutoff for a classic car, legally speaking. And I think that that's kind of in lockstep for what we perceive as 30-year-old cars. It's like that girl you went to high school who ended up like maturing into being hot factor. Like she was a nerd in high school, and then you see her, 10, 15 years later, and you're like, dang, girl, what have you been doing? You've been going to jazzercise or what? Zumba? You're looking pretty good. And that's where we are right now. I mentioned this in the last episode. Fox body Mustangs, you can't get clean ones with 5.0s and under 100,000 miles for less than like 10 or 15 grand. I mean, they'll go 50, 60 grand or more depending on how low mileage they are, how well equipped they are, how well maintained they are. And that's what I'm talking about, is like the trough. So if you buy a car from the 2000s, right now it's like aging into coolness, not aging out of coolness. It's becoming more valuable depending on how much you drive it and how well you treat it. It's becoming more valuable rather than less valuable. And that is yet another, guys, I mean, can you shut the podcast off yet? Did I get this? Am I right so far? I think a lot of you out there might be agreeing with me, where there are a lot of really good reasons when you stop and think about it as to why getting a car from like the late 90s, early 2000s, kind of cool. But I'm going to reel it back a little bit. It's a little bit like my marriage, where my wife, she married me because of how nice and how cool I was. And then after we get married, you kind of start mailing it in, right? Mailing in. Just kidding. Lindsay, if you're listening to this, she knows that that's all false, because I give it my all as a husband every single day. as I'm sure a lot of you out there do as well. They're not perfect. There are things I miss. Blind spot monitoring, that's a big one. Like autopilot features, that's a big one. I drove a Nissan Rooks, which was a KG Dosha van, a K car. I drove that the last time I was in Tokyo, and I thought it was awesome. And part of the reason I thought it was awesome is because it had autopilot. It had smart cruise control, right, where it can detect the cars in front of you. It can detect the lines. So that's really nice. Parking sensors, backup cameras. Gosh, going back to Europe, parking in Europe, I really appreciate their efficiency. And I think that they are making parking garages in Europe smaller and smaller because of this parking sensor technology where, you know, as an American, you'll look at a parking spot in a European parking garage like in Vienna, and you're going to say, there's no way I'm able to get into that. But, you know, beep, 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 and, you know, a couple turns, and you've made it into a really tight spot, and then your mirrors automatically fold up too, right? So those are cool, practical features. I think Lindsay's new Jeep, it's an automatic, of course, and I think it's a 7 or 8 speed. When she's going 80 on the interstate, I think she's like 1900 RPM. So it's very fuel efficient, and it's very quiet, and it's very calm on the interstate. Better sound systems, quieter cabins, all these things matter. I mean, the stereo system's a big thing for me. All my older cars, I mean, my Crown still sounds pretty good, but pretty much everything else kind of sucks. And they usually use paper cones that you have to replace whenever they get to be that old anyways. Those things matter. And if those matter more to you, like if those are must-haves, then just buy modern. It's not an argument. I'm not fighting with you. I'm not telling you to do what I do. In fact, a lot of things that I do, probably including this, are really, really bad ideas. I'm not a responsible adult. So don't even listen to me. Right now, I'm just ranting into the darkness about things that I like, not telling you should like them. Now let's talk about reliability versus predictability. I would wager that if you took like a late 90s, early 2000s BMW 3 Series, like I want to say it's like the E46 generation, you take one of those, like a 2003 or 2005, something like that, BMW, stack it up, and it's brand new. It's brand new. Like you snapped your fingers and it teleported here from the year 2005 versus a 2025 BMW. I would say in theory that maybe the older one would probably be more reliable for what I was talking about. There are fewer systems to break in these older cars, but they're still durable, and you still get like the creature comforts. But I'm saying theoretically, I think if you took a brand new car from the 80s, 90s, or 2000s, I would take the Pepsi Challenge in terms of reliability versus a car like, which one of these cars is going to make it to the year 2045 first? I would take the older car in theory. In practice, aging is inevitable. And you could say that about nearly anything. Low mileage, even if you've got, again, my 944 has 19,000 miles on it. My 69 Mustang has 41,000 miles on it. But I've still had to replace rubber. I still have to replace fluids. I still have to replace wear parts. The Mustang was getting to be such a pain that I finally just gave up and submitted it for a 2.5-year restoration that just finished up a few months ago. And this is a car that, yeah, it's only got 41,000 miles on it. It's super low original miles, super low miles. But, you know, it's also a car that's like 50 years old. It's like half a century old. You're just going to have to replace some stuff, no matter how little it's driven. So even if I would say that the older cars, like the 90s, 2000s cars, are probably, because of the fewer systems to fail, I think that they're probably more reliable. They're not magic, and they can't beat Father Time, right? None of us can. A word from our sponsor, eBay Motors. Ever try to buy a car and end up in a parking lot with a stranger in some blind trust? Or spend half the day at a dealership talking to pushy salespeople and signing paperwork? Or maybe worst of all, waiting for hours at the DMV just to transfer a title? That era is over. For years, eBay has been the go-to for gearheads, collectors, and do-it-yourselfers, because whatever you're into, From classics to SUVs, trucks to imports, eBay's got it. And now with Secure Purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your next ride, it's where you can buy it start to finish. Sellers and titles are verified, paperwork is handled by experts, and payments are traceable and digital, so you know exactly who you're dealing with and exactly what you're getting. Plus, you can finance, insure, and register your vehicle all in one place. No more hours at the dealership, no more trips to the DMV. Get your vehicle, plates, and paperwork shipped to your door, ready to drive, and it's all part of one seamless process designed to feel as easy as buying anything else online. And eligible vehicles purchased on eBay are backed by up to $100,000 in purchase protection. Thinking about selling your ride? Secure Purchase makes that simple too, because you know your buyer and their funds are verified. If you still owe on your car, the financing payoff is fully integrated, so you're not chasing paperwork or waiting on checks to clear. And with Secure Purchase, you get paid fast, and you're not going to be stuck chasing no-shows or answering the fifth still available email message. This is what modern car buying looks like. Skip the DMV, skip the sketchy meetups, buy it on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. I would say, though, that the 90s, 2000s cars are probably more predictable. The lemons have already been weeded out. Now, lemons are rare. If you get a new car with 0 miles on it, it doesn't matter who it's from. You're probably going to be able to hit the first 20 or 30,000 miles without too many problems, if any, right? But you might get a lemon. Or it might be a car that you buy the first model year. And I mean, I think those Grenadiers, as cool as they are, I think they had like 3 recalls in the first year. And they're less predictable. New cars are less predictable because you don't know the problems that are going to rear their nasty heads in 3, 4, 5 years, or even the first year. The aging is predictable. You can look at this car. Oh, I see today, sir, that you're interested in a Porsche 928. Well, you're going to have to look at the timing belt. That's really important. You're going to have to look at the coolant system. And, I'm just like, I don't really know 928s, 968s, whatever very well, but, you get it. I'm just kind of making stuff up. 66 Mustang, good example. Like any pre-69 Mustang, 64 to 68, you better scoot your butt under that car and look at the floor pans, because they were notorious for having cowl leaks, like where the fresh air comes in and those little grates right in front of your windshield. Those would get leaves, debris stuck in them, and eventually rust, and then lead to water leaking into the car, which would then get through the carpet, dry up, and eat the floorboards until they were gone, the front of them. It's predictable, though. You can say, look, this is something that needs IMS bearings on like 996 Porsches, right? That era of like late 90s to early 2000 Porsches. It's predictable. It needs to be done. Timing belts and 944s, it needs to be done. So that's one thing that I like. Sure, you might buy a Porsche 944 and then drive it for a year and have to put $8,000 into it. But if you did your research properly, none of that should have really been a surprise, where you can get completely rug pulled on a new car, right? You buy a 2025 or you buy one of those Grenadiers and it's like, shoot, we have 3 recalls. And then I think I've seen a lot about like the Jeep Grand Wagoneers, where I've seen these horror stories, like these pictures where the entire body is pulled off the car because of some flaw in some of them. Older cars fail honestly. They're going to do it. They tell you, if you've done your research, what's going to happen, and you could either head it off at the pass. Modern cars, they deceive you. They cheat on you. You don't know how you're going to be the guy who finds out. You're going to be the guy getting on like whatever, Reddit, Ask a Mechanic. And you're going to be the guy that's like, man, is this a thing? And everyone's going to say, I don't know. Is it a thing? Well, you're the first guy to drive 75,000 miles on a Grenadier, an Ineos Grenadier. So I don't know. Is it a thing? You tell us. Has anyone else seen this? Like, you guys are the beta testers. I think that they're more predictable, and I mean the cars from 90s and 2000s, older cars that have a track record you can understand what you're getting into. You can budget for it. You can be mentally prepared. There is lower psychological overhead, and there's lower financial overhead as well. Purchase price. Let me give you an example. I bought my Toyota Crown from my buddy Aaron at Bulldog Auto, who exported it almost exactly a year ago today for me in Japan. And he exported it from Tokyo. I think I paid $5,300 delivered for that car. Now, once it gets over here, I have to pay duties. And now right now you've got tariffs, of course, and sales tax. I think I was in, and maintenance, like initial, I like a good baseline. I like to get all the fluids changed out whenever it gets over here. Hold on, guys. My cat's throwing up. Jojo, call it $8,000. I'm all in for $8,000 versus a $40,000. I can't think of a $40,000 car if I had to pay for it, right? Not if you gave it to me, obviously. I can't think of a single car that exists right now that costs $40,000, that's 2025 or 2026 or whatever, that I would rather have than my $8,000 Toyota Crown. I will pocket the $32,000 and I will buy something else if I want to with it, or not. I'll invest it in my kids' college fund. I'll go blow it on a weekend in Cancun with the boys. I will do something else with that $32,000 that will add value to my life versus spending it on a new car that's going to go down 40% when I drive it off the lot and continue to depreciate until it gets down into the trough, and then hope I treat it well enough where it comes out of the trough, but we're never going to get there because we're going to worry about parts availability, and we're going to freak out, we're going to lose our minds, and it's not going to be a new car anymore. We're not going to feel cool. We're going to be embarrassed when we bring it to the company picnic because we're driving an 8-year-old car. In the meantime, that guy Don, who he's so cool, and you're pretty sure that your girlfriend kind of thinks he's cool too, he's driving the brand new BMW versus your 7-year-old 3 Series. There's none of that. You're rolling up swagged out in the 2000 Royal Saloon G Toyota Crown, which happens to be a phenomenal daily driver, and it's cool and it's interesting, right? And it's got a little bit of soul, a little bit of character. That to me, like, why would I spend $40,000 on something that I feel like gives me less and something that I'm going to have to pay interest on? And the transactional fees, the dealer fee and the tag fee. But the point is, psychologically, I think it's better. From a budget standpoint, it's better. They're less expensive, and I think more rewarding if you're willing to do the work. You got to put in the work. So who is this for? It's not for everyone. As I've mentioned before, it requires confidence. You got to be a confident guy, especially to drive a car from the late 90s, early 2000s. They're kind of cool, but I still see people, kind of look at it. It's like, man, is that guy driving a Toyota Avalon? It's not going to look like the coolest car to everybody, but you've got to be confident. And when someone says, what kind of car are you driving? It's like, dude, this is Toyota Crown Royal Saloon G. Haven't you heard the saying in Japan, someday a crown? This is the car that Japanese executives, that they aspire to own someday. This is the mark of success. And people listen to you talk about it, just like you're probably listening to me talk about it right now. I mean, let's use us as our relationship here as an example. You might be thinking, man, I mean, that sounds like a pretty cool car. And it is. But if you're not confident, if you're embarrassed by it, then this isn't the car for you. Be as charming as your 1985 Porsche 944. This is not for people who need warranties and who need certainty and who are afraid to open the hood on the car. You have to be comfortable with engaging with your car a little bit, with understanding what it needs. You don't have to be a mechanic. You don't have to be like ASE certified. Just kind of be comfortable with knowing what the car needs, what might be going. If it doesn't start, I would hope you would at least have a couple of ideas of why not. If you can't do that, this ain't for you, and that's fine. This is for the guy who has been listening to this podcast, listen to me rant about this, kind of gently nodding your head and saying to yourself, hell yeah, brother. That's who this is for. And I think that it's actually for a lot of people. I think that you may want this even though you don't know you want it. I think you might want this even though you might be a little bit scared of it. just educate yourself. You're listening to a podcast about cars. It ain't going to hurt you to pick up like Car Mechanics for Dummies, or, hit the old Barnes and Noble, or if you're in Dakinyama, you can go to T-Site, one of the coolest bookstores I've ever been to, with the biggest section on cars I've ever seen as far as a bookstore goes. Just learn a little bit, be confident. You're a cool guy. You're listening to the Automotive Icons podcast with James Reeves. It's my honor to be here. Thank you. Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy New Year. Take care.